All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. It is lovely to be seen by so many of you again for our second edition of kind of how-to pairings with our society whiskey. You know, my mission kind of over the course of this year is to bring in many different people from different culinary backgrounds, just so we can find new ways to experience our society whiskeys. I think we've all probably been to a tasting of some sort where a charcuterie board was presented as kind of the snack or the meal. And I thought it'd be really fun to kind of dive in a little bit deeper to what exactly, is on those boards and kind of take a deeper dive into, how they're made and the history behind it and all of that good stuff. And so I am very excited to have Kevin Ouzts of the Spotted Trotter, which is a charcuterie house here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I have some very delicious things to taste along with 3 very delicious society whiskeys. And I hope many of you had the opportunity to place your order so you can taste along with us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Kevin. Hello. Oh.
Hi.
What you doing?
Caught me in the bottle.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well. I'm going to be much better after I get some of this deliciousness in my belly.
Definitely.
I've been staring at it all day. It's been sitting on my desk and torturing me. So I'm very excited to dig into this. So I know. Look at this.
We're going to dive into some good stuff. Definitely.
I've never been so excited to have meat sitting on my desk. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So before we kind of get into the deliciousness of all of this, I did just want to say hi to everybody who is here. So let's see. We had Charles Hoffman was here starting off with 7.255 Giggle Jiggle. That was a very good one. And we have Greg, and we have people here from Colorado. Cat in a Garden, hello to you. Dram Session, we have Alfonso here. Joseph, George Kaplan, hello. And yeah, so the Whiskey Throttle says, is this going to make me thirsty or hungry? Well, I think it will make you both. And I'm excited to, sate my palate with all of this deliciousness. So I guess let's get into it. So Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about you and how you came to be master of all things cured meat, and maybe tell us a little bit about your shop, The Spotted Trotter?
Sure. So first, thanks for having me, Jenna. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all your whiskey heads here and have an opportunity to discuss the greatness that is good meat and quality spirits. I think it's something that, long ago, there was not quite the excitement and the robust, flavor for good quality spirits mixed with meat. And so now having the opportunity to do this is one of my favorite things to do. Without ado, I will talk a little bit about how I got into it. The world of meat came upon me as a chef. I started several years ago working as a chef in Atlanta. It was something that, as a young man, I always had a ear or a taste for food and all the good things that came with it. The passion for having a good palate came from my mom. Ideally, when I was a very young man, she would have French cooking parties at her home and at our house as a young man. I remember.
That's cool.
Yeah, pretty neat. And I harken back very early age, just remembering the smells in the house and things like that. And, many years went past. I went through high school and college and actually got a telecom degree from the University of Georgia. I worked for Home Depot and worked for UPS for 6 years. Worked for Home Depot in advertising, then went to work for selling Microsoft licensing at a reseller, and did that and was just very unhappy. My wife met me, and she was finishing law school at UGA, and I was finishing school there, and I decided this wasn't my path. And she always knew that I had a very fond interest in cooking, and said, let's send you to culinary school. And so with a big smile and a big grin on my face, I did. Worked with some fantastic restaurants in Atlanta, got my culinary degree, and really focused later in life in something that I knew I could had a passion for. So it struck me, like a needle. I dove right in and got excited into working with some really great chefs who understood the nuances of good food and how to make good food happen, which was developing an understanding about seasonality, really understanding where the food comes from. Worked for some fantastic chefs in Atlanta, won James Beard Awards. And then I had the opportunity to go work for one of the finest chefs in the world, Thomas Keller. So I went out to California.
No big deal.
At the French Laundry. And then something struck me. So as I was, riding my little bike into town from Napa to Yountville, I passed this really interesting charcuterie called the Fatted Calf. Several times a day, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, I had a lot of time on my own to think about what was going on in my life. And I went in one day and he said, I'll teach you what I can. I'll teach you what I know. Just don't open a shop in Napa. Well, that's when the light bulb went off. And I started to really understand that it was 2008, mind you. So there wasn't a lot of money going around to loan folks for restaurants. So I came back to Atlanta, and coincidentally, the farmers markets had just started in Atlanta. And so I had the opportunity to start up my business in 2009. And I rented a tiny little kitchen in Decatur, Georgia. I was making 500 pounds of meat, 600 pounds of meat. I think I got up to about 1,000 pounds of meat a week, doing that solo by myself. Did that for about 8 months. It was really tough. Came home many nights crying, wondering what I'd done. But through the networking of the chefs that I had met and the people that I knew, we were selling through the Farmers Market Network, and lo and behold, a little over a year later, about a year and a half later, I got my first bricks and mortar location. So we were in there, and we got into a strip mall of all places to manufacture salami, and we did that for we were in 1A Suite A for. We did that for about a year, and then over a period of about 10 years, we took Suite A, Suite B, and Suite C, and we were doing about 5,000 pounds of meat in a 2,200 square foot kitchen.
So you went from 500 to 600 pounds to how much?
We were doing about 5,000 pounds of meat over. At the end of about 8 years, we were doing that in a
that
tiny.
That's like a lot of meat.
Yeah, it's a lot, and in a very small space, mind you. So it was a huge challenge to get all that done, and we really understood the nuance of you grow until you got to grow again, and you reach your limit. And we had in that building, and it really, like I said, it was a strip mall, wasn't meant for manufacturing meat. So we did that, and then we just recently, about 3 years ago, moved into a new building, the building that you've been to, Jenna. It's a little under 8,000 square feet, and we're about to move again. So we're in the throes of doing a fundraise for a 24,000 square foot facility. So we are doing well, growing like we should, and having a great time doing it, and really trying to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. There are some good charcuterie makers in the country, but one of the things that sort of delineates us and differentiates us in the marketplace is that we try to develop what's known as new American charcuterie. So we utilize the terroir of the southeastern United States to procure a lot of the ingredients that we use to make our meats. So we're not only using different ingredients, but trying to, really just understand the old techniques and pay homage to that, but also use new techniques and bringing great flavors into the meat. So not only using great ingredients, but also all the meat is humanely sourced and pasture raised, and it's been that way since we started. So we're really trying to peg a new understanding of what is growing in the Southeast, how we can really put that on the face and cover of our products, and make sure that we celebrate that in the best way that we can. And so through some channels and just different distribution chains, we've reached some different grocery stores, and we're trying to get into the retail higher end markets and things of that nature, and trying to sell to a lot of really great restaurants and institutions that really understand the integrity and the way to do it right. And we constantly are striving to produce products and ingredients that no one else in the world is making. So having a great time doing it and creating some really fun stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reading on your website, and I'm going to read it here because it really does, kind of connect. It just reminds me so much of whiskey. And I think the connections between whiskey and food, are so great. And it says, and I'm just going to read it directly from their website. It says, whether it's the cilantro in a crepinette, I believe I said that right, or the fat used for lardo, every taste you experience is affected by the environment in which it was developed. When the finest products are procured, they take on a power of their own. Then when combined properly, all of the components delicately work together to marry their flavors, mature, and bloom. And that's, it's beautiful, beautifully written. And it reminds me so much of whiskey because, you take a great grain and you take great wood and, you combine those together and you have something so beautiful, like 3, different whiskeys that we're going to have here today. And, it's really nice to hear you say words like terroir and, things like that. We're starting to hear that used more in whiskey. Typically that's, you think, oh, wine, the terroir of wine, that's kind of where the word's been thrown around the most. And we're now starting to see that, a lot more here in the world of whiskey and to hear it in food. And I feel like, even in just my experience that, people, especially who, drink whiskey, they want to know where the whiskey's coming from and how it was made and, the people, behind it, the story behind it. And I believe the same to be with food. Yeah. And I think that was probably the first movement that I got into, as a mom. My daughter started drinking milk. I was like, okay, I have to research every possible thing I can about this product. And that's when I started. I'm like a milk snob now, because I really I did hours of research and taste testing and, I want full fat, the fat on the top, I did that. And that's what kind of sparked my love of knowing where what I'm eating or drinking is coming from. So it's really nice to hear that you stand behind that as well,
Yeah. So, and the ethos of understanding it's not just about a trend or a fashion and eating and the food that we create. It's what's nourishing us, right? So why would we not want to really do a little bit of homework and really understand who's taking the time and the principles to make the food that we're putting in our body the best we can.
Absolutely.
You've got a lot of folks doing, and some folks probably in Europe, but in the United States, we're a 252-year-old country. This is a 3,000-year-old art form. When we decided to start making charcuterie, we wanted to really showcase what was happening in the Southeast and in the United States, for that matter. And so, knowing and understanding where those ingredients were coming from, having relationships with the farmers has been critical, and it's been that way since we started. And it's grown. It's been interesting to watch. I will say, though, as long as I've been alive on this planet, it's hard to identify a lot of great brands that as they've gotten bigger, they've gotten better. So it's really important to try to maintain that as we grow and keep the integrity of the product there and in place. And I'll say that, there's a few companies, I say like Starbucks does a good job with it. As it's said, it really takes a lot of time to do it right. And we take, a lot of pride in that. So that the most important thing I would say is just constantly trying to identify where those pinch points are with growing and growth and making sure that we keep the integrity of the product there.
Well, I'm excited to taste some of that integrity, so to speak, in these delicious products in front of me, which we're going to talk about. But before we start tasting anything, which I know I'm my mouth is watering, can we talk about how to pronounce charcuterie? Because I've asked everyone in my family that I've spoken to today how they pronounce it, and my brother-in-law. You probably got 6 different answers, right? I did, but my brother-in-law, he's actually from France, and so he does a beautiful job of kind of helping me through it. But can you talk a little bit about what is charcuterie? Am I pronouncing it correctly? What is it? Okay. Where does it come from? Can you just give us a little history on this?
Absolutely. So the history, my understanding of how charcuterie came about before it was so intertwined with the food system and the food ways we're developing in now is the idea that Caesar at one point was roaming the earth, which we like to believe we think happened. Okay. And he had to feed a lot of soldiers. And so these military armies were so vast and massive that, they'd take an animal out, a pig, a sheep, and they'd have to eat the whole thing. They couldn't just, here are the sexy cuts, let's cut a couple of ribeyes and you're good to go. They had to use 100% of the animal. So as they did that, I would imagine, this is kind of my take on it, is that the animals were chopped up, macerated however they could, and then they would be stuffed into the intestines and then roasted over fire or smoked, sometimes salted. But it was a way to feed the masses, really. It was a complement to making sure that everybody got nourishment where they could. Fast forward thousands of years in Mama Leone's kitchen in Italy, and there's foodways all over the world. They had to have a way to preserve food. So you killed an animal in the wintertime, you had to make sure that your food system could sustain you throughout spring, summer, fall, and get you through those seasons. So a lot of times when the animals were harvested, typically in the cool months after the animal has taken on as much meat as it can from eating, probably a little more sedentary, less movement and less active. So they want to get as much meat on the animal as possible. The animal was then harvested and typically put up, and they would put the animal up in several different ways, making different pâtés, covering them with lard and fat, and these all represented the flesh of the animal. So charcute is flesh or cooked flesh, and charcuterie, and then someone who makes charcuterie would be a charcutier. And so that would be what we do. Yeah. So it always irks me just a tiny bit when people say, how long is this going to last? And I think back and I'm like, well, it's a preserved food. It'll pretty much last. It'll outlive you and I if we need it to. It may not taste that great after a year, but it will definitely it's going to be there to sustain you in some form or fashion. There's culatello hams and prosciuttos that they age for 2+ years in Italy, and so it's a really interesting mode of how, if you watch the history of it, how it's become more identified as a fun food, something that people are having a lot of unique synergies with their different food systems and foodways. I like to akin it to barbecue. In the United States, it's like you could go to upstate New York and they call barbecue, chicken cooked on the grill, whereas you go to Kansas City and they would just laugh you out of the state or city. You go to someplace in Southern Carolina, and you're going to have a completely different experience of barbecue. Well, the same thing, similar to charcuterie. Genoa is the superb one in Italy, and it's got 4 ingredients. It's red wine, garlic, salt, pepper, and for the lion's share of, you look at that simple recipe, and I guarantee you could find that same style of ratio in Germany. You find it in Hungary. You find it in parts of Eastern Europe, and it would be something that you have to look at what's available to you and the ingredients and what you can get to put in that meat that makes it great. So charcuterie, by and large, is something that not just happens in France, in Italy. Salami and a salumeria is generally going to be something that is solely produces pork. So those are generally going to, and you're going to find a description for, or you can find an argument for every side of it. But generally speaking, a salumeria in Italy will contain the lion's share of what they're producing is made from pork. And so there's a fine line of Italian salami and French salami, very different, but also very uniquely the same in that regard.
That would be interesting, though, to kind of have a certain style of, let's say, a salami from maybe 3 different countries and kind of taste those side by side, kind of similar to whiskey, even in just regionality, you get such a big difference. And so it's exciting. So let's get to the first one, which is a Georgia, right? It's a Georgia blue salami.
Let me speak to that real quick. So just when I trained out in California, learning about how to make charcuterie, it was in San Francisco. And that's, those of you that do know San Francisco, it's got a very cool, tepid climate. And they used to hang salami in the kitchen, for God's sakes, when I was training. And then I came out to, live in Atlanta, and we're trying to get involved. And it's, it's like a soup. The humidity here is, you could cut it with a knife. Yeah. So we have to put bacteria, lactocultures inside the meat and on the excess outside of the meat to help it grow mold. And so what we discovered is that it really likes the humidity in the state of Georgia. So the mold wasn't something that was having a tough time growing, I'll just say. So we had to really understand how to cultivate and how to control that mold a little bit better than, say, Salt Lake City, Utah, or someplace in California. So it adds an element of flavor that, quite frankly, there's not anybody making salami in the Southeast. We are, really having a great time kind of harboring that flavor profile. And also the texture of the salami is different, Jenna. So it's going to be a little bit softer.
Okay.
It's not going to be hard. And so that's something
it
really,
is. I can feel
it differentiates us.
It is soft.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, before I taste it, which like my mouth is watering, I'm going to taste the whiskey first. And so we'll get into like this first pairing. So the first pairing that we're going to taste is Juicy Oak and Vanilla is our first flavor profile. And we're going with cask 1.249 Whiskey Afternoon. And this is a 9-year Speyside and first fill ex-bourbon barrel. So this is the whiskey we're going to be tasting. If you can see it, if my camera will focus. And I have some in the glass already. And I have not tasted the second and third whiskey that we're going to be tasting, but I have tasted this and I very much like this whiskey. So I'm excited to taste it with this Georgia blue salami. So this is like a blue cheese salami, I guess.
So this is a pretty special salami. By and large, salami has a good percentage, 30% more of fat. And instead of using just straight pork fat, we pulled some of the pork fat back and we utilized blue cheese. So we work with a fantastic dairy out of Thomasville, Georgia, called Sweetgrass Dairy. And they develop an incredible blue cheese called Asher Blue. And we partnered up with them. And if you just on the nose, if you have an opportunity to smell the salami, it's outstanding.
You definitely get like a little blue cheesy kind of like funk to it. So I'm going to like nose the whiskey, nose the salami. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the whiskey, there's like this really beautiful, like subtle sweetness to this. I mean, I'm getting like, I feel like I'm like a field of flowers and there's like a bunch of pigs around me that will one day be this delicious salami. I mean, this is like very floral, very like, it has great texture. Like you can, like when you smell things and you're like, oh, I can kind of guess what the texture of this is going to be like. Like I find that a lot in whiskey, that smell is like textural in a way.
Yeah,
and this definitely has that element.
It's very creamy to me.
I agree with you completely. There is like a biscuity creaminess to this whiskey. That's really nice.
Definitely.
So, all right, I'm going to taste this now.
Those creamy elements, to me, they play with the acidity of the cheese. And I learned long ago, and I've done, a number of different tastings with whiskeys and beers and different bourbons. And one of the things that I like to really understand most is the complexity of either, contrast or, how it complements. So to me, I think this one complements it really well.
Yeah, this is like, I feel like we're making one of those like ASMR videos, like people just like hearing me chewing this. So I have a question. So typically, like I told you earlier that we have like mowed through a whole sleeve of pepperoni from you, like it's gone. And like when we eat it, we typically will just put the whole piece in our mouth, like the whole full piece. Is there a proper way? Like with whiskey, we always say, the smaller the sip, the more flavor you're going to get. The bigger the sip, the more alcohol you're going to get. So is there like a proper way? Can you put the whole piece in your mouth, or
if you're eating whole muscle? So we didn't do any whole muscle today, but we should do another pairing together with whole muscle. It's sliced much thinner, and ideally things like prosciutto or coppa or lomo should be sliced razor thin, and they should almost melt on your tongue.
That's what this does.
Yeah, it does. It's got that wonderful fat in there, and I think it, it's got a little acid on the back. The acidity from the cheese definitely comes through, but I think it sort of gets washed into that maltiness, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and the blue cheese note is like, it's there, but it's so like subtle and like
Mm-hmm.
intertwined into the other flavors that I'm getting. It's not like aggressive in your face. And it's funny, when I read the pairings, when you sent them over, when I read blue cheese, I was like, oh, I would almost think that that would be with the last whiskey that we're going to taste.
Right.
But you know, that is what I was thinking in my head, not knowing anything about any of this. And now tasting these side by side, like the whiskey is like creamy and it's sweet. Yep. And the salami is like salty, and there is that like little bit of acidity, and it just like melts on your mouth. And like, yep. It's almost like trail mix, right? Like you're getting that little bit of sweet, and now you get that little bit of salty, and
it's got a really fundamental balance that your tongue is just aching for.
It's so good.
Can I ask what is a hobnob?
A hobnob is like a type of, so in the UK they call them biscuits, but it's like a cookie. So have you ever had like a McVitie's?
Yes.
Okay, it's like to me, I'm just explaining it from my perspective. I could be incorrect, but hobnob is like a biscuity, and I believe it's like ginger, if I'm not mistaken. Anybody out there who is a hobnob aficionado or expert, please chime in and let us know. But I believe that's what it is. So it's like biscuity, like a biscuit cookie type of deal. So, and Morgan Schaefer is asking, is there going to be a link for purchasing the meats being tasted today? Yes, we did post that in the email that we sent out last week. Did we send that out last week? All the pairings and links are in there, but Morgan, I will get those sent over to you as well. And you can order yours as well and taste it, because this is so delicious. So exactly. So let's kind of, I want to break this down for a second. So what is salami? If somebody came up to ask you, what is salami? What part of the animal is that from? Or break that down for me.
The lion's share of what we're eating today is going to be cut from the shoulder or the copa. So it's this muscle right here along the side. And then we partnered long ago with several farms in Iowa. And then when we originally opened, we had some friends in Nashville that opened a fantastic little butcher shop called Porter Road Butcher. And we always had this idea that one day we'd be able to work together buying their meat, because they had a fantastic co-op in Kentucky that they bought from. Well, fast forward 10 years, 11 years, and Porter Road got a little bit of VC funding, and they have recently, as of end of last year, opened a beautiful new processing facility, and they sell direct to consumer. Check them out, Porter Road Meat, but they sell all the beauty cuts, all those really pretty cuts that we were talking about earlier that Caesar wanted to take. So they needed somebody to grow with them and balance out the lion's share of the things that they couldn't sell. So that's where Spotted Trotter came in and served a really fantastic puzzle piece for them. And our business are growing together, and we are purchasing the lion's share of our pork from them. Beautiful animals, and they come out of some fantastic farms out of Western Kentucky. So they're called Porter Road Meats, and they're on the outside of the package as well.
Yep, I see here.
The lion's share of these cuts are going to be from the shoulder and the copa.
Copa is just the muscle, or is that the cut? That's the muscle.
It is the muscle.
Okay, and that's this part.
You open it up, and there's a small muscle with a little eye in the center, and that's what copa is made from. Copa or gabagool in Italy, they call it. Capicola. And then salami, by and large, is going to be something that's chopped. It's going to be chopped or ground into what's known as a farce. The farce is then spiced, seasoned, whereas whole muscle would be seasoned on the outside. One of the things that makes our processes different is that we, instead of doing dry salting or curing in that form or fashion, we make these beautiful aromatic mashes. So our lomo, we make a beautiful sherry mash with it's got all sorts of beautiful pimenton in it. We put the loin in it, let it sit for 10 days, and then we take it out and ferment it for the longest legal limit allowed by the USDA. Gets really nice and funky, and then we cure it for about 8 weeks.
So I'm going to stop you because you said ferment. You're fermenting what? Like break the stick.
The fermentation
down for me.
The fermentation cycle. So all the salami that anybody makes, so it doesn't matter if it's made here or China or Italy, it doesn't really matter. It has to have a certain amount of sugar. The way it operates is we put a bacteria culture in it. So the culture gets mixed in. We buy it frozen. It comes in a powder. We keep it frozen. And then that has to have some way to wake up. So the fermentation, we harbor it in a small area with 75% humidity at around 70 degrees. The bacteria wakes up. It's hungry. And by and large, every salami that you eat will have some form or fashion of sugar in it. So with either dextrose, corn sugar, and inert sugar that you can't really taste. But we like to talk about New American Charcuterie. We had the happiest accident we ever had. I was overthinking the sugar part of it, and I thought, how about we use sorghum syrup for the sugar? So we created the black pepper sorghum salami. The bacteria coincidentally woke up. It ate the sugar, but left the beautiful sour from the black pepper sorghum. So it has just this incredible, just big nose on it, very sophisticated flavor profile, and it was just a fantastic salami, and it still is to this day one of our biggest sellers. It's just, and it won a Good Food Award this year. So pretty cool, but by and large, the salami part is going to be, regardless of where you're making it or what regionality it comes from, it has to have a certain amount of sugar. The fermentation part is what creates, it's what you call reaching lethality, whereby the acidity goes up, the pH goes down, it harbors all the good bacteria and disallows any bad bacteria to grow. The mold starts to grow on the outside, and the mold serves a couple of different purposes. One, it gives it flavor, body, and integrity. Two, it also keeps it from over drying, or gets what's known as case hardening. The outside of the salami can harden faster than the water can evaporate. And then what happens is the bacteria starts to eat the sugar, and then it runs out of sugar and starts to eat the meat, and then you'll get big holes. So that's called case hardening.
Interesting.
And so we have to be conscientious of having a good mold layer on the outside so that the drying happens at a slower rate. It also, like I said, creates safety for the salami so that it's not harboring any bad bacteria. It's basically a race to see who can cover the bacteria the quickest.
Yeah, I did. I didn't. I always like to go into these things knowing nothing. I don't want to know anything because I find I learn the most when I go into things like that. So I can just ask all the questions that maybe they're silly questions, maybe they're smart questions, just so I can go into it completely kind of open-minded. And I never knew any of this about salami, like at all.
And it's really important, Jenna, to know that, and for your viewers, is that mold is good. We people see mold, they think of it as like a horrible, this body of just mass of distasteful, gross, and that's not the case at all. The fermentation creates mold, and the mold is a lactobacillus mold, something you eat in cheese, you eat in yogurt, just in a little friendlier format. But mold, by and large, on salami or a whole muscle can be several different colors. It can be green, yellow, dark white, blue. You think about the mold that's in blue cheese. So you've got a couple of different iterations. The only mold that you need to be conscientious and aware of to not eat is dark black mold or red mold. If you ever see that,
okay, don't eat it.
Right.
Don't eat it. All right. That's good to know.
Yep.
I did want to make a note on the hobnob thing. Mike said hobnobs are made from oats, and that's the predominant flavor, no ginger, rather like a flapjack, which is another traditional biscuit. It's a great reference for whiskey. So it's an oat.
Gotcha. Okay.
Biscuit. Yeah. All right. There we go. See, you're teaching us so many things. We're teaching you things.
That's awesome.
What a partnership. All right. Well, shall we cruise into the second pairing? Which we're going to go into our deep, rich, and dried fruits flavor profile with cask 89.16. And my decimal is one off there. This is 89.16 yummy stuff. This is an 11-year Speyside that was in an ex-bourbon hogshead and then went to a second fill ex-Pedro Jimenez hogshead. So good, delicious sherryness. We will taste this one. And with this, would you like to kind of introduce what our pairing will be?
Yeah, can you talk to me a little bit about the EXFX?
Yeah, so this cask was, I don't have the whole breakdown in front of me. Actually, I do in my head. So this spent 9 years in an ex-bourbon hogshead. And I kind of like to think of a hogshead as like a Frankenstein cask in a way. So basically it's a bourbon barrel that's been deconstructed and then rebuilt to be a little bit bigger size. And then after the 9 years that it was in that ex-bourbon hogshead, kind of soaking up those good, beautiful caramels, vanillas, it went into a second fill XPX, which is Pedro Jimenez, which is a style of sherry, fortified wine. And PX, or Pedro Jimenez, is like that kind of sticky, sweet dessert wine. You think of like Oloroso sherry, that's going to have like a more like a nuttier type of profile, whereas Pedro Jimenez is more like that sticky, gooey, delicious, desserty. Just, it's so fantastic. So we will see kind of some of those profiles. Hopefully, I haven't tasted this whiskey yet in the whiskey. So
awesome.
I mean, on the color alone,
so
you can tell.
The smokiness, though.
There is kind of like a charred element to this.
Yeah.
And that's from the cask.
Okay. I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
Ooh, I'm excited to taste this. This smells delicious. I'm getting like kind of that sweet, like figgy jam almost. Like a figgy.
I really, yeah, the sherry, the stickiness, I definitely get that. There's a lot of play with the smokiness. So this is sort of a black sheep, this Spanish Salcychon. Now, let me tell you why. So we have a partnership with a fantastic Spanish importer called Tienda. They recently took hold of a fantastic Iberico pork herd out in West Texas. We partnered with them. It's called Texas Iberico, and we partnered with them to be the cure master for their salami line. You guys should definitely check out their product. It's fantastic. We make all that stuff at the Spotted Trotter. But when we partnered with them, they wanted us to make a lot of Spanish salamis for them. Well, I said, why don't you taste our Spanish Salcychon? I sent them a package of that, and they were aghast. They called me and they said, this is not Spanish Salcychon. Spanish Salcychon doesn't have pimenton. I said, well, this is not Spain. So I didn't want to.
This is Georgia.
Yeah, I didn't want to seem like the southern redneck and was like, I'm just going to do it the way I want. But really, it was speaking to what we do as a New American Charcuterie. We wanted to showcase the pimenton, the fantastic, the provider of we work with, anytime we smoke at the Spotted Trotter, we smoke things on pecan wood. So we took this beautiful salami, we added an element of sherry to it, a lot of beautiful smoked pimenton, and then
which is what?
Pimenton is a type of paprika. It's a beautiful little pepper. Massive in Spain. It's what chorizo is flavored with. This is like the redheaded stepchild of chorizo.
Okay, I was gonna say it kind of gives me chorizo vibes.
Yeah,
there is a chorizo vibe here.
It is, and then we cold smoke it on pecan wood, so it's got this beautiful smokiness, the sweetness from the sherry, and I think when I had the 889.16, I thought that's the one.
It's so good. It's so good. I can't wait to share this. My husband's gonna love this. I'm gonna have to hide it.
And the nose is I get a lot of peary fruit from the whiskey on the nose. The very front has a big kind of pear fruit nose to it, and then it kind of dives down into this smoky sort of. You get a lot of the sherry notes to it, and then it ends with the kind of the rub of the pork fat and the nuttiness from the pork fat.
It really does kind of like cut that. Like I find like the PX almost has, it's not drying on my palate, but there is definitely like an intensity that just lingers on your tongue essentially. And then you taste this and that like fatty deliciousness like kind of acts as like a blanket and just kind of like extinguishes like that intense flavor profile that sits on your tongue from the whiskey. It's really beautiful.
You get the bacon, the fat. Yeah, that's a neat pairing. Really,
is this
unique.
So is this from the same part of the animal?
Yeah. So all of the salamis are going to be from the part of the animal. The next one we're tasting has a little bit more higher fat content.
Okay.
But this, by and large, is a smaller grind. I don't know if you can see the size of the grind is a little bit more fine and congruent.
We'll compare them. This is so interesting. I've never like even thought to like look at these things when it comes to this. Is the first one,
and the fat inside there.
The second one.
Yeah. So this is a much thicker, larger grind.
Okay.
And you see the it's almost like clear spots in there, and that's the that's the fat from the blue cheese.
Oh, and this one, yes, it is almost translucent.
Yeah. Pretty neat.
Yeah, it is, and it's
I realized
the texture.
When I was making,
like
different.
When you were speaking of texture, like the texture of this, like you can just literally pull it apart with your fingers, whereas like some salamis that you get at like, I'm just gonna say, and I'm not knocking it because it's usually in my fridge, from Trader Joe's or any of those, like the texture is a little more like firm and like stringy almost.
Okay.
Whereas this is so buttery and soft.
Yep.
I've never had a salami like this.
So that comes from the moisture. The moisture in the air has a lot to do with that. And how we store the meat, how we store the salami, and how it's it's produced with a lot more water activity.
It's delicious.
That's a fantastic pairing. That's been my favorite so far.
So
they work together.
Oh, sorry, they really do work. It really is. Like I really liked the first one, but this one is like, this one just is like meant to be. Like this pairing is just. I mean, I don't know if you could find a more perfect. I don't know. We haven't had the last one, so I don't want to speak too soon. But this is a really perfect pairing. So this the Salcychon. Pronounce it for me. Look, I can't even pronounce the words.
Salcychon.
Salcychon. Okay.
So it just means
that's
sausage.
Just a style.
It means sausage.
Okay.
In Spanish.
And it's just a style. So like the ingredients that are in this is what you would find in any of this style anywhere.
To get back to that story, if you were to go to Spain and buy Spanish salchichon or just salchichon in Spain, it would be essentially like the Genoa of Italy. So it doesn't have any pimenton in it. It's not orange. It should be. It would look like this blue cheese salami. They have some, just very simple ingredients. Truly just a very simple salami. And they call it salchichon. It's just a sausage.
Yeah, I mean this is outstanding.
Thank you. Awesome.
I mean, this is like, this may not make it to the fridge.
And it's really fun when you start, imparting some big, nutty sheep's milk cheeses. Just throw it over the top. A sheep's milk cheese with this cask 8916 would be unbelievable.
Well, that is going to be definitely a question that I want to pick your brain about because, like I said in the beginning, at whiskey tastings, a charcuterie board is, almost guaranteed. It feels like. I feel like I've been to hundreds of whiskey tastings and there's always a charcuterie board. Nice. And there's always like different variety. They always look different. Every, restaurant that you go to has like a different style of doing it. But I would love to kind of pick your brain as to, especially for us at home, if we want to build one of our own, like, what's the best way to do that? Is it to have meat, cheese, fruit, nuts? Like I kind of like to pick your brain as to what you think makes kind of the perfect pairing, especially for whiskey, because I know so many of us like to make these
definitely
as we're tasting through whiskey. So
putting those things together is one of the favorite pastimes of the house here. And when we have the opportunity, typically it's good to. There's a lot of classics out there, and you want to pay homage to those people that have been doing it for 1,000 years, and they did it. They do it like that, and have done it like that for that long because it tastes pretty fucking good. So they're going to continue to do it. So the idea that, you try to remember those flavor profiles, but what's cool about what's happening now in our food system is you think of sheep's milk cheeses, the natural is Manchego, but there's so many incredible cheesemakers in this country. And, finding sheep's milk cheeses that are going to have that same acidity and butteriness is, it's fun to do. And that play is really fun. So when you're putting a board together, if it's for a big party and you're trying to, you're dressing to impress, it's really important to remember that I call it, organized confusion. You want to make sure that you place the meats down with a lot of really good intent on spacing in between the meats, but texture is really important, right? Like you don't want everything to have a creamy base. You don't want everything to be super acidic. Challenge yourself to use things that have, textural just enhancements and things that get your mind going and get your eyesight going. And, you want things to that's really important. So the contrast of how you build the board is fun. You think about flavor profiles, really cool to think about contrast and complementing notes. If something's buttery, you want to add, a buttery cracker, or you want something that's got a big richness head to it. Try to hit it with some sharp, pepper notes. But that contrast is something that our flavor profiles. When I was working the French Laundry, we think about what makes a perfect bite, and that's trying to coordinate all the flavor profiles in your tongue, right? So you want to get sweet, salty, umami, bitter, sour. And we try to achieve balance in all the salamis that we make too. So it's important to know that when you're putting a board down, there's people that love sweet, but there's also people that are more interested in the sour and the little bit of the fermented funkiness. So you try to touch base on all those things and try to create something. Now, I will say something that's coming to pass that has nothing to do with things that we make, but are the canned seafoods from Spain. They're a bit of a delicacy, and they would pair incredibly well with some of these whiskeys. But playing around with those, just some different mussels and clams and things of that nature that are put in sauce, and some octopus. I generally
think about that.
I'll do those on a separate tray because people just can't quite get over the hump yet. But it's becoming more and more popular, and I think for a good reason, because it tastes really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the first series, I guess, or first edition of the series that I did was with Erica of Cheese, Sex, Death, and we dug into the world of cheese. And it has completely, I now budget in my grocery bill for fancy cheese now. Yeah. And when we came down to the Spotted Trotter, we picked up the cheese. Tell them about that delicious cheese, because I had it for dinner tonight. And
Cotton Bell.
Yes, Cotton Bell cheese. It was absolutely
soft ripened cheese.
Oh my gosh. It was I couldn't stop eating it. And I was like, I have things to eat later. I need to stop. But it was so delicious. And just the appreciation I have now for cheese is sure. I've never thought I would really have that. And now, after this, I'm going to have such a different appreciation for, cured meat and charcuterie and salami and what it takes to create these, because I've never tasted anything like these before.
Thank you.
These are really, stunning to taste, and along with these whiskeys, I have to pinch myself. This is fantastic. So thank you for
make it easy. And I'm sure Erica told you about it, but their cheese actually releases an endorphin in your brain. So it's something of a curiosity that I have about cheese.
That's why I like cheese so much. I'm cheesehead. I could eat cheese. Literally, I could eat this and cheese and a nice little sherry or port or a whiskey.
Yeah.
That is my perfect meal. A little toast, then a little jam. Oh my gosh, that's the perfect meal to me. So, all right, I'm trying to get this last one open so we can taste through this one. Yeah, there we go. All right, so tell us. Let's pour the whiskey. I'll talk about the whiskey. And now that I have this open, all right. So the last one. Oh, John is asking, is the cheese that we're talking about available on your website? Can they order that delicious cheese that I had?
You can order it. Yes.
On the website. Okay.
Not on the website that gives you an opportunity to do delivery. So if you just go in there and it's on that part of the website.
Okay. So they can go in and have it.
Just order it Through, yeah, there is a channel to order through direct, and then there's a channel to order off the site itself. So you would order direct and they would send it.
Okay, perfect. And John, if you have any questions, you can send me an email and I will be sure to kind of get you point in the right direction. But we'll talk about where you can find all of these delicious things at the end. So, all right. So the last whiskey that we are going to be tasting is, of course, a peated whiskey, because we can't have a pairing without a peated whiskey. And we are going with cask 53.379, an Indulgent Seaside Feast, which is a 10-year Isla that was in a refill ex-bourbon hogshead. And I just cracked this open today. Very excited to taste it. And I know you said you quite enjoyed this one. So
yeah, this to me was my favorite whiskey of the three. I mean, it hits a Seaside Feast. It kind of hits that just uber clean, like meaty. I think it's when you think of a bite of fresh lobster, it's like that's the kind of clean, meaty richness that I got from this whiskey. So I was trying to think of things that, you have that creamy kind of white fish flavor profile, and what to me speaks to that really well when you think about balancing that creamy white richness is just an aromatic, very floral salami, something that has a little bit of creaminess, but also has notes of that, that fennel, and I thought of Pidocchiano. And to me, this is a very classic, old world, probably one of the oldest, coolest salamis, and it has notes of toasted fennel, toasted anise. Something that makes our salami and the spice and the flavor profiles that we make all our spice packs in house. So all the spices that we create by hand, and it's not made by another party. We create all that, and you can see you can't really see the.
I know. I was trying to show it too.
There is whole fennel seeds in there.
Oh my gosh.
The nose on this is just outstanding.
The texture on this one's a little different too.
It is.
Okay.
It's just amazing.
You know what this tastes like? A really good slice of pizza. Like a really good slice of pizza.
Yeah.
Is what this tastes like. I mean, it is so, the nose, like you said, big aromatics on this. Like when I opened the package, it was like big aromatics, and
yeah, like
on the palate, nose and palate definitely match on this one. This is so flavorful. Wow. So tell me why texturally, like the texture on this is a little different.
So it's softer because of the amount of spices in it. It's fermented. Okay. It's got a higher fat content. So just have to remember that anything with more fat is going to definitely be more a little the subtle. You have to create myosin when you're mixing the salami. So all the molecular structure of the protein is mashed together. So we mix it for a certain amount of time. The more protein that's in it, the tighter it's going to be, and you'll start to see, the meat comes together in this sort of fashion. When you have more fat, it's going to be a little bit more loose and subtle. So it's going to just be a little bit more, a little softer, and definitely, it's for what you're, I guess, tasting and the flavor that you're getting, that creaminess. So that's going to be a part of what makes the salami is the textural difference in what you're tasting in Georgia Blue as opposed to Spanish Salcychon.
They're all so different. You could, if you were to taste these, blindly side by side, like there's, I don't even know what my mind would think because they're all so different. And this one is just, the amount of flavor that is in this little sliver of heaven it's crazy.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh, it's so delicious. Okay, I have a quick question for you. So Kyle says, since we are nearing the end of the scheduled pairings, what would Kevin recommend as a whiskey to pair with something like Virginia/country ham?
Of these three, so if it's a country ham, typically is going to have an immense amount of salt. That's one of the constant battles between American hams and Italian cured prosciuttos is the amount of saltiness and smokiness to it. So I would try to pick something that was going to balance that out. So I would go with a more, for me, I would do something a little more fruit forward, something that had flavors and notes that were kind of pulling away from the smoke. That would probably be what I would try. Sherry's pair wonderfully well with that. But if you're looking for a whiskey, I would do something like the Indulgent Feast, probably something like a little more creamy, big and round, that had a little bit more fruit notes to it.
Well, there you go. All right. So as I'm kind of tasting through this, so the 53.379, when I first nosed it, it almost smelled like a bacony, like buttered popcorn is kind of the note I got on the nose. And then when I tasted it, I got this just like very big, like black pepper, like just, like intense wave of like spiced black pepper. And as I was tasting through, the salami and then tasting that, I was like, oh, I wonder if these are going to kind of combat each other because they're both so intense in flavor. But they don't.
No, they don't.
I think this might be my favorite pairing if I had to pick one. This pairing is outstanding.
The black pepper of the whiskey working within the fat and creaminess of the Finocchione, I think it's pretty incredible. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't even have words that I'm now this like enamored over, a plate of cooked flesh or charcuterie as they call it. This is crazy. It's I'm so excited to learn all of these things, that way when I have friends over or I'm at a tasting or I'm hosting a tasting that I can like take all of these little morsels of knowledge that I've learned, from people like Erica, people like you, and share them with people so they can go out and have like this. The experience we're having right now is so special. And I want everybody to be able to have an opportunity to experience that. So thank you for, sharing this little part of your world with us and
absolutely
kind of inspiring us to go out and taste these things as well. So
thank you for having me. This has been a real treat. And I think the sort of array of products that we have, I'd love to do one with whole muscle and dive in, because there's some really fun things. I was just going to say with this last pairing, it's neat to see eating a piece of salami and then having a sip of the whiskey and then trying it, reversed is something fun, because as it coats the tongue, the different flavor profiles that you get within the order in which you eat and drink is pretty neat to do. But I would love to do something with some whole muscle. And so anytime, I loved it. It was fantastic. Had a great time.
You don't have to threaten me with a good time. I'm always down for that. So, but before we go, I have one last question for you. So Mike asked, what kind of cheese would you drink or pair with the last whiskey? So with the 53.379, what type of cheese do you think would?
So I would do like a big pecorino, something that had a little bit more nutty richness to it. Hard ripened Alpine would do well as well. Something like a Tome or a Pecorino would really work. I think that's what I would go with that. Good Parmesan would be fantastic. And you just can't go wrong with that on the Finocchione side. But that would be that'd be what I do.
All right. Well, those are good tips. So can you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can order?
Absolutely. So
give them the
guys,
scoop.
depending on what part of the country you're in, we're moving and shaking the best we can. Right now we're in Central Market out in Texas. Any of the Hy-Vee grocery store chains up in Iowa. We also landed in some Whole Food opportunities and the let's see, Fresh Market, and we sell through distribution through GFI. We are in Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz, bunch of different stadiums around the Southeast. And then you can always call the website, go on the website rather, www.spottedtrotter.com or thespottedtrotter.com. And then our Facebook page will put you right where you need to be as well, or our Instagram shot. But give us a like or a follow, and we do have the promo Good Meat right now, so it's 25% off if you guys order anything from the Spotted Trotter site. And I would definitely say the Georgia Blue, we try to keep that seasonally. We run it through the summertime and or actually in the fall, and then and we have when we get orders in, we'll put it on the website. But for what we're doing right now, lots of great salamis in play. I think we've got about 15 different lines of salami currently in production. So let us know. And then we sell direct to all of our butcher shop, and everything, that all the cheeses, like I said earlier, are all available to you on that as well.
Awesome. And they're delicious. I would not tell a lie. They're very good. So I would definitely recommend the delicious cheese as well to go with these. These are absolutely fantastic. So, all right. Well, I mean, we're at our hour, and I'm sad because I could taste like 20 more different varieties.
We've got plenty more, but I think, and so we do something with Erica. We do a cheese and charcuterie tasting, but
that sounds great.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you very much for all your great viewers. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a job. So thank you guys so much for being out there and tasting all the good stuff. And stay hungry, and always eat good meat.
Yes, and drink good whiskey.
Drink good whiskey. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Kevin, hang tight with me for just a second. Okay. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will be back next month with another kind of how-to pairing to, figure out the best ways to enjoy our whiskey. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I'll leave the Spotted Trotter up here. If you have any questions about anything that we tasted tonight, feel free to shoot me over an email at jenna@smwsa.com. I'll send you all the links to the pairings, and that way you can taste these for yourself. So we will see you next time. Bye.